The thunder roared outside the glass walls of the penthouse, echoing like the rage buried in his heart. Alexander Reed, the man the world called the cold CEO. Billionaire. Ruthless. Unshakable. He built empires without blinking, destroyed competitors without mercy, and loved no one. To him, emotions were distractions and love? A weakness he vowed never to touch again, but that night, as lightning tore across the skyline, fate decided to test his vow, because standing across from him, drenched, trembling, her apron clinging to her soaked uniform, was Elena. His maid. The girl who owed him everything, yet somehow, would become the only one he couldn't live without. The rain outside hadn't stopped for 3 days. The city below glistened under the storm's fury while Elena wiped the marble counters, her fingers raw from endless work. 6 months. That's how long she'd been working in Alexander's mansion, repaying her father's debt to Reed Enterprises. It wasn't slavery in words, but it felt close. Every paycheck vanished into numbers on a ledger. Elena had heard the stories about her boss, how he fired employees for small mistakes, how he never looked anyone in the eye for more than a second. His world was cold glass and steel, no warmth, no softness, just control. She tried to stay invisible. She cleaned quietly, spoke little, smiled never. But destiny always finds ways to cross lines that were never meant to meet. That evening, while cleaning his study, her tired hand brushed against the edge of his desk. A coffee cup tipped over. The dark liquid spread like spilled guilt across a stack of important documents. Her breath froze. Panic struck. She grabbed tissues, desperate to save what she'd ruined, and then his voice sliced through the silence. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" She turned, heart pounding. He stood in the doorway, tall, sharp-featured, ice-cold as the storm outside. His suit was immaculate, his expression unreadable. I'm sorry, sir." "It was an accident." "Of course it was," he interrupted, his tone biting. "People like you always ruin things by accident." Those words stabbed deeper than he intended. People like you. Poor. Powerless. Replaceable. She dropped to her knees, blotting the papers as her tears mixed with the coffee stains. When her trembling hand brushed against his, she flinched, not because of fear, but because something about his touch sent a strange current through her. "Leave it," he said coldly, "but sir, leave it." Yet she didn't move. She stayed, cleaning until the stains faded. He watched, anger warring with something unexplainable. No one ever disobeyed him. No one cared enough to fix what was already broken. That night, as she left, he caught himself staring at the damp cloth she'd left behind. For the first time in years, the silence of his penthouse felt heavy. Days turned to weeks, and something subtle began to shift. Elena continued working quietly, but little gestures began appearing in his life. A cup of tea beside his desk during long nights, his favorite pen placed neatly where he could find it, the faint scent of lavender after she cleaned his office. He never thanked her. He never asked. But one night, when exhaustion overcame him, he woke to find her beside him, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead. "You should rest, sir," she whispered softly. "You work too hard." Her voice was gentle, warm, a sound he hadn't realized he missed. Their eyes met for the first time without walls between them. Something stirred deep within him, something he thought he'd buried long ago. From then on, he began noticing her. The way she hummed softly while cleaning, the way she tied her hair when she was focused, the quiet sadness in her eyes. He found excuses to pass by the kitchen just to catch a glimpse of her. He didn't understand why. He'd never needed anyone. But Elena's presence made him question everything. Yet, just as feelings began to bloom, his fear returned. He had seen love destroy people. His father's suicide. His mother's betrayal. Love, he believed, made you weak. And weakness had no place in his empire. So, when the day came that her debt was finally repaid, he hardened himself once again. Elena entered his office holding her clearance letter. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "My contract ends tomorrow, sir. I wanted to thank you for giving me work when no one else would." He didn't look up. "Good. You've done your part." Her smile faltered, but she nodded. "Then I guess, this is goodbye." The moment the door closed behind her, silence crashed down like thunder. The air felt colder, heavier. For the first time in his life, Alexander Reed felt something he couldn't define: loss. That night, as the rain poured, he found himself pacing. The penthouse, once his sanctuary, now suffocated him. His reflection in the window looked hollow. He poured himself a drink, but it did nothing to fill the emptiness spreading inside. Finally, he grabbed his coat and ran into the storm. He didn't even know where he was going until he saw her, standing at a lonely bus stop, clutching a small bag, her hair wet, her eyes tired but strong. "Elena," he shouted over the rain. She turned, stunned. "Mr. Reed? What are you doing here?" He stepped closer, rain cascading down his face. "You can't leave." Her brows furrowed. "Why not?" "Because," his voice broke. "Because I don't know how to live without you anymore." She froze, tears mingling with the rain. "Sir, please, don't say things you don't mean." "I mean every word," he whispered. "You were never just a maid, Elena. You saw me when no one else did. You made me human again." Her voice shook. "But you said love is a weakness." He took her hand, pressing it to his chest. "Then let me be weak for once." For a moment, time stood still. The storm raged around them, but in that tiny corner of the world, there was peace. She took a deep breath, then whispered, "Then let's both be weak together." He smiled, the first real smile of his life, and pulled her into his arms. The cold man the world once feared finally found warmth in the one person he'd once overlooked. Months later, the mansion no longer echoed with silence. The same glass walls that once reflected loneliness now glowed with laughter, music, and life. Alexander Reed was no longer the man who commanded power through fear. He led with heart, compassion, and love, and every night, as rain pattered against the windows, he'd look at Elena, now his wife, and remember the day she walked into his life as a maid who owed him everything, because in the end, she didn't owe him anything. It was he who owed her, for teaching him that even the coldest hearts can learn to love again.